Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another predictions video, and in today's video I'm going to be predicting the Jan versus Figueiredo fight. And so if you are new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so, like video if you do indeed like video, and let's get straight into it. So going into this fight, Jan is 17-5 with 7 KOs and 1 submission, and Figueiredo is 24 3-1 with 9 KOs and 9 submissions. This fight is a 5-round fight in the bantamweight division. Jan's last fight was a win via unanimous decision versus Yadong, and Figueiredo's last fight was a win via unanimous decision versus Vera. Figueiredo is 36 and Jan is 31. Jan's UFC losses have come versus Sterling in 2021 and 2022, O'Malley in 2022, and Dvalishvili in 2023. Figueiredo's UFC losses have come versus Formiga in 2019 and Moreno in 2021 and 2023. And to speak a bit more about what I've just been saying, like I say, this is a matchup in which perhaps was an interesting matchup. It was, a matchup in which a few years ago I suppose you wouldn't have really thought would end up happening, but in general it's a matchup in which I'm very excited about, and I think as a UFC fight night it's a very good UFC fight night. Obviously this one is out in China. I believe this is the UFC's seventh event in China. It's got lots of Chinese names on it. There's not a clear kind of Asian fighter that's really doing great things in the UFC at the moment. I mean, when you think about it, I mean, Xiaonan and Zhang Weili, they're doing great things. But I mean, on the men's side, you kind of look about, there isn't too many. I mean, I'm surprised Zhang isn't actually on this card. But then, yeah, if you look about, there was Zhilang, and he, recently got beat. There was a Korean Zombie, and he's just recently retired after getting beat. There's Song Yadong, of course, and he's just lost versus Yan. So, there's not really many big names there around the kind of Asian scene. I mean, Tyra as well, just lost as well. So, on the men's side, there's not loads of big names. On the women's side, there are the big names, but I suppose that's saving the likes of a Zhang, who, of course, is a champion for the other kind of big pay-per-view events. So, there's a good co-main in Xiaonan versus Richie for that co-main event spot. And, like I say, that's a good matchup. But it's interesting to see that they thought they'd put this matchup on a UFC China card, but nonetheless, it's interesting and it's entertaining. And for me, I think it's good. I mean, for a UFC fan who's from the UK, it's going to be nice to watch a card that's at a good time. It's an early morning, early kind of daytime card for UFC time. So, like I say, that's nice to see. And, like I say, they're both on good, well, goodish runs. I mean, Jan returned back to winning ways last time out versus Yodong. Figueiredo, though, is on a great run in the bantamweight division. Obviously, he had the whole thing with Moreno, and perhaps it ended a bit controversially with the punch in which Moreno landed in that fourth fight, which really damaged Figueiredo's eye, and then inevitably ended up with Figueiredo having to be stopped by the doctor. But that whole kind of era has ended. And I think in general, for both of them, when you fight somebody 4 times at the highest of levels, it will be draining, and I can only imagine what it takes out of you. And I think in general, you just want fresh blood. You want to change things up, and I think for both of them, it's perhaps taking a little bit of time to kind of go away from that era. Figueiredo has seemingly quite quickly gotten settled into the bantamweight division. He's had to really kind of come into it, and build himself through the rankings. I mean, he's not really had it easy since coming into the bantamweight division. For a lot of champions and even ex-champions, when they've been as dominant as Figueiredo was as a champion, he was a dominant champion. They get moved along quite quickly in the division if they move up a division or move down a division. Figueiredo, he's had 3 fights now and he's fighting a Piotr Jan, so it's not a bad fight, but he has had to build his way into the UFC bantamweight division, and I think in general a lot of people expected him to fade away, and perhaps I was one of them amongst him. Looking after the wins versus Moreno, and how it ended on a bad way, everybody was kind of expecting him to fade away, and in the bantamweight division, not really kind of stake a claim or really make much of a run, and especially in the state of the bantamweight division at the moment where it is stacked and there is some great names. Figueiredo has definitely been on a good run, has cemented himself as a certified name, and if he's able to beat somebody like a Piotr Jan, obviously, like I say, back to winning ways, and of course, an ex-champion himself who's only ever lost versus the top guys and has been in pretty much great fights against all of them. I think the Sterling one, the second fight was a good but very good performance from Sterling, and it was a cementing performance. But the first fight obviously ended in a controversial kind of stoppage, so that you don't really count that too much. The O'Malley fight was a very close fight, and it was a back and forth type fight where Jan had a lot of success with counters, and that Dvalishvili fight, Dvalishvili is always able to kind of suffocate you, and of course he's the champion at the moment, so he's not lost to any bad guys. He's seemingly been around the division for quite a while now, and in general, I thought he was older than what he is. I think it reminds me of a Max Holloway type story where you expect him to be older than he is because of how long he's been around in the division, but he's not. He's still only 31 years of age. He can definitely make another run for the title if he is able to beat someone like a Figueiredo. Like I say, I think they're both kind of on the edge. One possibly two more fights after this. If they win this, perhaps a number one contenders type fight, and then they're right back in it again. Obviously, for Jan, he is typically the much smaller guy and the guy who is always having to punch you up and is against much bigger guys in the weight division. Against Dvalishvili, that wasn't really the case, but against Figueiredo as well, it's I think going to be a nice thing for Bjordion because she's the more natural bantamweight. Of course, every fighter in which Figueiredo has fought against, well, in the past two fights, that being Vera and Font, they've been, of course, natural bantamweights as well, and Figueiredo's done very well to beat them. But, Jan, I think it's going to be refreshing for him to be the more natural fighter and to be the more natural built fighter at the weight. And yeah, I think in general it's going to be a nice thing for him. And like I say, speaking about the bantamweight division and the belt at the moment, the belt's been changing around quite a lot. I mean, Jan had it, then Sterling had it, then O'Malley had it, and now we have Dvalishvili having it. So, somebody like a Figueiredo coming in could perhaps take it, and it's a division in which, like I say, has been changing hands. It's not had one clear cemented champion in recent years, so you never know. Figueiredo might be able to come through and become a two-time champion, and it would be a great thing. It'd be a great feat for him to be able to do, and we'll have to wait and see. Obviously, he has to get through this tough test. And to speak about them both individually as fighters, Figueiredo as a fighter, I think he's got good takedown timing, and his wrestling in general is very strong, and strong physically as well. And I think Jan has good-ish, solid takedown timing, but hasn't got as strong a wrestling as that of Figueiredo when he does use it. I also think he has very good reactions in which he utilizes in his wrestling very well and is able to always move well if it's on his feet, if it's on the ground. He's always able to typically move well. He's composed a lot of the time as well and seems quite relaxed when he is striking. He circles well, and I think that's something he's got better than that of Jan. His striking variation, I would say, perhaps is better than that of Jan. His stopping of takedowns is something in which he had success with against Vera. I think Vera was going in for quite sloppy takedowns, especially into the latter part of the fight where he was tired, and Figueiredo just wasn't accepting it and was just brushing him off quite a lot, and that was nice to see. It was impressive to see, and so in general, I think he's got good takedown defense. I think his defensive submission attempts is also something that's good. I think he's able to go for attempts at takedowns whilst he's on his back or in positions of defense, and that creates an uncertainty in opponents. It creates a hesitancy, I believe, in opponents. I think opponents won't want to commit to strikes or commit to takedowns if they think there is that possible risk of Figueiredo being able to have success even when he is in that defensive position. And that's where the likes of like a Charles Oliveira has had so much success in the past, because he has made fighters hesitant to even go to the ground because of how good his defensive wrestling alongside his offensive wrestling is. And it's something in which is rare to see but impressive to see. He's got very good balance, I believe. He attacks from low down. A lot of the time, he seems like he is kind of punching upwards and attacking upwards, but he seems like he's successful with doing it. And even if he is in crouched positions and he's able to have success. And Jan, a lot of the time, will come through with overhands and like to punch over the guard, but I think Figueiredo might have success if he's able to counter upon that when, even if he slips a shot and then is able to come through with his own shot as well. I think in general he has that unexpected power. I think his power is definitely carried going up the weight, and that is something in which you have lots of questions about, and a lot of the time it isn't the case that he does carry, but I believe from the looks of things, even though he does seem like a smaller guy, like physically, I think his power has carried, but it's now become that bit more unexpected type power. And I think he was able to have success versus Vera and against Font as well, landing big shots. And in general, I think he also has that smart wrestling. Negatives about him, I think perhaps he leans on his back leg a bit too much and is waiting a bit too long with shots. And if he's trying to catch, he's just, like I say, leaning back a bit too much, and I think that also will result in his chin being in the air a bit as well. He's got quite an open guard, different to that of Jan, where Jan has that more compact, tight guard where he's catching more shots. Figueiredo's is much more open. I think landing clean in close is something in which he doesn't always have a lot of success doing. His physicality, of course, he is, like I say, the physically smaller guy compared to that of a Jan, but in general, I think it's obvious his physicality isn't the same, even in the flyweight division when he was fighting the likes of Moreno. It seemed like he wasn't overly physical. Attacking or attempting to get off his back, I think sometimes because, like I say, his defensive wrestling is very good, he can sometimes rely on that a bit too much and just kind of stay on his back a bit too long. I think sometimes he throws in singles and isn't committing to combinations as much as what I would like to see, or somebody like a Yarn does. He can sometimes wait too long. I think he doesn't necessarily make his opponents respect him overly much, and I think sometimes he can headhunt a bit at times. Speak about Jan as a fighter, though, he's aggressive. I think he's a much more aggressive-minded fighter than that of Figueiredo, especially when he gets in his kind of groove and rhythm. And to be honest, he doesn't. He can get in his groove and rhythm and be losing a fight, and that's something in which is impressive about him. I think he is fueled by that aggression. He, like I say, punches over the guard very nicely and has success with that. He has good, strong kicks, and he has utilised that in recent performances very well. He lines up his shots nicely. A lot of the time, he's very measured in his work and is often making sure, even though he doesn't have the longest of reaches himself, that he's making sure his shots are well lined up and timed well to be able to have success. If that being with counters or if that being with just offensive shots in general, he gives his all. He can fight at an in close or at a mid range successfully. I think perhaps he's better in close than that of Figueiredo. He has big uppercuts in which he often lands. He is able to keep you down a lot of the times as well. So I think it'll be an interesting battle. If Jan does get Figueiredo to the ground, how that would fare out and how that would play out, I think it would be interesting to see. I think he's strong, like I say, much more stronger than that of Figueiredo. He's got good takedown timing as well. He's got a high guard. He can flip momentum successfully, and that's down to his counters being so strong. When he was fighting O'Malley, a lot of the significant strikes in which he was landing was counters, and he was having a lot of success with that. Even if O'Malley had a moment which hurt Jan, he was able to then flip that momentum with a successful count afterwards. He's got good back trips in which he was able to have success with against O'Malley, and in fights prior to that as well against Sterling as well, he had success with back trips. I think securing the hips for the takedown is something as well in which I think is impressive, and certain fighters when they're going for double legs don't always have the best of success, but Jan is always able to secure the hips typically and then be able to get him down to the ground from that. He's got a good chin as well. He's been in plenty of wars, plenty of back and forth type fights now, and he's had to show a good chin. And again, going back to the O'Malley fight, he took some big shots, but he was able to show a very good chin and keep coming forwards. And that's something in which he's very much able to do, to just keep coming forwards and putting on that pressure. I think his footwork in close, to speak negatively about him, isn't excellent. I think he does kind of square up a little bit and stand a bit tall, and then, like I say, his balance or footwork in general isn't excellent. I think Figueiredo might be able to capitalise upon that. I think he gives up his back a bit too much when he is on the ground, even in defensive or when he's in attacking positions as well. Sometimes he'll make that mistake and give up his back, and that's not something in which you really want to be doing against somebody like a Figueiredo, who is a successful submission artist to an extent. He's not got a crazy amount of submissions, but he is definitely able to find openings and will attack that if he does see one. His head is on the line a bit, Jan, and if Figueiredo is able to time with his shots, I think he could hurt him. I think he can be backed up if he's waiting a bit too long. He definitely gets backed up in straight lines, and in general can be pushed back because he just wait too long sometimes. I think he stays in range. Going for submissions in general, even in attacking positions, he doesn't really attempt to go for submissions, so perhaps that's not really something in which you have to be too aware of the submission threat of that of Jan. He can tire. I think it's shown in a couple of recent fights, and of course this being now a 5 round fight, he's not really had to deal with that in the past couple of fights. Obviously he's had plenty of 5 rounders now, but I think it's shown that he can tire a bit. Against movers, I think sometimes he can struggle to pin you down. Like I say, a lot of his work is very measured, but he does kind of rely on you going to where he wants you to go. And against movers, I think sometimes he's not able to capitalize on that as much. And I think Figueiredo is a good mover. He reacts to feints quite a lot, and Figueiredo, I believe, will go for that if he sees that. He goes back in lines, like I said. I think his accuracy with his hooks isn't amazing. He's going to counter with that and going to attempt to go for hooks, but I just don't think his accuracy with them is anything too impressive. I think he stands, like I say, quite tall, and he can be quite wild at times, sometimes just ducking his head down and swinging. Figueiredo is the favourite for this fight, and I believe that Figueiredo will win via unanimous decision. I think it's going to be another performance where Jan is going to look good, and he's going to look strong, and probably is going to land good, strong counters, but I think inevitably Figueiredo is going to have more success. I think he's going to get him down to the ground and have success, and Jan's going to struggle to get off his back. And in general, Figueiredo might even hurt him with a shot in which he picks a shot off. I think Jan perhaps might rush in a bit, or might get dragged in, or might try and drag Figueiredo into a fight, and Figueiredo just doesn't do that. I think there's various ways in which Figueiredo can outclass Jan and make him look like the better fighter, Figueiredo, and I think he'll do that and, like I say, win via unanimous decision. Then we could go on to fight. I mean, like I say, it's a very good division at the moment. The bantamweight division, of course, we just have that newly crowned champion in Dvalishvili, and it seems like he's going to fight Nurmagomedov next. So, there are other big names available still around. So you have the likes of O'Malley, of course. Nobody really knows what's happening with him at the moment since the defeat versus Dvalishvili. He said that he wanted to have time off. So perhaps we're still going to have to wait another 10 months before he comes back. I don't know if that's injuries or, collection of things, if he just wants to have more time to have his mental reset. And so, there's various things like that. And I think we aren't going to see him for a little bit. Something like a Cejudo is still, I think he's still about in the bantamweight division. He's talked about going back down to the flyweight division again, but something in which is very difficult to do, especially as you get older. To go down from the bantamweight division to the flyweight division is going to be something that's very difficult to do. And Cejudo isn't really, he's a small guy, but he's quite a stocky type character. So I think it would take a lot for him to be able to get back down to the flyweight division comfortably. So I just don't really see it, to be honest, and I think a Figueiredo fight, he might take a fight like a Cejudo, so, I believe he's still ranked highly in the bantamweight division, so it wouldn't surprise me if a fight like that might happen. I believe, Cejudo is going to call out everybody possible, and if a fight like that becomes available, I think he'd be silly not to take that fight. Or something like a Corey Sandhagen. I mean, Sandhagen is coming off that loss versus Nurmagomedov. It was a convincing defeat, but Nurmagomedov is looking very destructive at the moment, and Sandhagen has had recent wins, recent success. Is still somebody who's been around in the bantamweight division for a long time and has fought a lot of the top guys, so I think he'd appreciate a new opponent, and Figueiredo definitely could be that. And like I say, if he's able to win against the likes of a Jan, he's definitely able to put himself in a number one contenders type fight, and really get that close kind of bet into staking a claim for him being a two-weight world champion, in which, like I say, is something in which I don't think anybody expected from him when he did originally move up into the bantamweight division. But yeah, that is it for today's video. Hope you did enjoy. Like the video if you didn't, like this, subscribe if you are new, and thanks for watching.